Welcome to more World of Warplanes content from the Noble Queue, and in this video I'll be looking closely at the Spitfire Vb, the highest tier aircraft available in the October Challenges missions that are currently running. Here's my Spitfire Vb on the tarmac outside my hangar, and it's sitting amongst, that's a rather large cake. That's almost enough for breakfast. Some fireworks and presents as well. It's World of Warplanes' 8th birthday. And this is the aircraft that a lot of you will have recently completed a very long personal points grind for, and maybe some of you are still on that. And I've often heard it said that the Spitfires are jack of all trades and master of none. Well, in some circumstances, they're rather better than that, and in the hard-fought replay that is in this video, you'll see that this aircraft gives as good as it gets and then some. Anyway, what we'll do next, we'll look at the numbers for the aircraft, but if you don't want to look at the spreadsheet, use the links below to skip ahead to another section of the video. Before we talk about the Spitfire Vb statistics, let's explain how this spreadsheet works quickly. In columns C and D, you can see the information for the Spitfire Vb. Each of the other Tier 6 fighters has a pair of columns off to the right, as you can see. Down the left, the main characteristics visible in the hangar UI, plus a little bit of extra information from other sources, is used to construct the information that's contained in the body of the spreadsheet here. For the purposes of comparison, the aircraft was put into the stock configuration, equipment was demounted, pilots sent back to the barracks, but the modules are all top in every case. Green on the spreadsheet indicates best in class, light blue second best in class, light purple with third best in class, and a gold colour behind the name of the aircraft indicates that it's premium or reward. And if we just scroll down gently, we'll see that the best in class logic is reversed using red colours. Okay, so let's talk about the aircraft. Rather than concentrate on any particular characteristic of the Spitfire Vb, I just want you to look at the information in columns C and D, and I think you can see immediately that very little is best in class, or second best in class, or indeed third best in class. The fire resistance is best in class, but then so are many of the other aircraft on that particular characteristic, so that's nothing special. Bear that in mind, that's going to be a theme of this discussion. So if we talk about the gun armament, we actually see that its overall rating is third best in class, but exactly like the fire resistance, several of the other aircraft have the same rating. The two Spitfires, the A6M50, the Russian Aerocobra over here, and indeed just off the screen the LA5. And if we just scroll along, we'll see that the best in class is actually the P39N1 Aerocobra. That's the American version, by virtue of having a 37mm cannon and quite a lot of machine guns. The Mustang 1A, the British Mustang, has 4 20mm cannons, which make it equal best in class, and then the KI-88 also has a 37mm cannon. So the armament is pretty good, but it's nowhere near best in class. Survivability, it actually is overall rated as second best in class, but then again, so are many of the other fighters. These survivability figures are nowhere near exceptional. Airspeed, it's below average overall, but it's actually commensurate with the term fighters. Where it lags behind is against the high energy fighters, such as your BF-19F, P-51A, the KI-88, or even the Mustangs and the I-210. But as far as term fighting is concerned, this is a very serviceable airspeed again. Manoeuvrability, again, it's serviceable, it's commensurate with the term fighters, most of them, and it's a lot better than the high energy fighters, as you would expect. I want you to pay attention to the A6M50. That is capable of outmanoeuvring the Spitfire, even in its base configuration. If you encounter one of these with the special pilot Akira Akane in it, it will easily outmaneuver the Spitfire. So if you see one of these in battle, be wary. You'll also need to be aware of the XP55 Ascendables. That's often built with very good equipment, at the very least ultimate level equipment fully calibrated, and if so, you may very well struggle to outturn one of those as well. And there are some of the other fighters. The Yak-1M, very much doubt if it would have done that in real life, perhaps in the Soviet winter, not in British conditions, I'm fairly sure, but in this game it will, in theory, outturn the Spitfire. So you're going to have your work cut out in term fighting. You need to know what you're doing. Nevertheless, it is the standout characteristic of the aircraft insofar as any of the characteristics are noticeable. Altitude performance, you're going to be looking upwards quite a lot. It's commensurate with most of the term fighters with one exception. That exception is the captured Spitfire Vb 605 or the Messerschmitt, which, and this was a real thing by the way, the Germans did actually capture a Spitfire and install a Daimler-Benz 605 engine, and in this game that gives it quite a bit of extra altitude performance, and unfortunately that makes this the best tier 6 Spitfire. That rankles a bit. Whilst you'll be able to look down on the Zero, which is a good thing since that is highly manoeuvrable, and the Yak 1M, pretty much you're either going to be flying on a par with all the other aircraft until you get to the high energy fighters, the usual suspects, the Bf-109F, the P-51A, but even the I-210 and the two British Mustangs could very well be flying above you. You'll need to have your wits about you at all times because you are going to be susceptible to being dived upon. If we scroll down, and we look at the worst in class section very quickly. Don't worry too much about the survivability. Lots of the aircraft have much the same figures, so this red isn't really significant. The airspeed, I said it was below average, and as you can see, there is some red appearing. Actually, the worst in class cruise speed, but it's by such a small amount, and it's not vastly different from most of the other term fighters. It's not necessarily that significant. 8 seconds boost is actually reasonable. It's not great, but it's not bad. Manoeuvrability, there are some gotchas here, and these are worth noting, particularly the roll rate, which is worst in class. And it's the same as the other two Spitfires in the A6M50. If you're in something like an LA5 and you've got a tier 6 Spitfire chasing you, it would be worth you rolling your aircraft constantly to try and detach it. You may very well escape that way, and several of the other aircraft, it might be worth trying that as well. Also, the optimum range, that's the range of speeds in which the characteristics of the aircraft don't degrade, is the worst in class for this particular plane. Okay, it's not much worse than the other two Spitfires, but it is, as you can see, noticeably worse than many of the other aircraft. Now, it's probably not going to be something you can control in a battle, well, unless you're an elite player, but it is going to be a factor sometimes. And the altitude performance, as you can see, there's a bit of red there, just confirming what I said. That as far as the term fighters are concerned, it's mostly alright, but against anything which is a high energy fighter and of course that captured Spitfire, it's going to struggle. So what does that all mean for this aircraft? Well, it's often said that the Spitfire is a jack of all trades and master of none, and there's some truth in that, but more subtly what it means is that there will be some battles in which the aircraft struggles to make an impact, but there will be others in which, if you know how to fly it, and it's the right sort of map, and the right sort of opposition, it can be a bit of a monster. Okay, let's go and see how I've set my aircraft up. Here we are back on the tarmac with the Spitfire 5B, and the first thing to notice is that my aircraft is in specialist configuration, so all of the equipment and consumable slots are available. This is what I've done with them. Equipment, gun sight in the cockpit slot, and I didn't mention that the dispersion angle on the cannons is a fairly typical 0.6 and it's 0.8 on the machine guns. Again, that's fairly typical, but those aren't particularly good figures overall, so gun sight is certainly going to help with that. The best characteristic of the aircraft, without being anywhere near best in class, is the manoeuvrability, so I've concentrated on improving that. So we have the lightweight wing frame and we have the lightweight power unit. The main reason for putting on the reinforced skin is principally not to degrade any of the manoeuvrability. It's not that I think that the aircraft is particularly weak for a fighter, it's got quite average survivability figures. As far as consumables are concerned, a single seat fighter, so a fire extinguisher. In a tight spot, I'll welcome the extra manoeuvrability the pneumatic control assist provides for 10 seconds. I don't really want to lose manoeuvrability. I will repair a wing and or a tail if I can with the emergency control system. This isn't the fastest of aircraft, and chasing down other aircraft, particularly heavies for instance, or some of the high energy fighters, is going to be difficult. So I've got the engine cooling for that reason, to give me 10 seconds of extra boost, so I've got a chance of staying with them long enough to shoot them down. And then finally, universal ammunition, fairly usually. Of course, as you know, I don't use gold. When it comes to pilot skills, well, this is a premium or reward aircraft, so probably you'd want to use it as a crew trainer, but then you'll probably be training pilots or fighters, and there's a good chance that you'll want to get aerodynamics expert first. I like to put on aerobatics expert second. These are both good for improving manoeuvrability. Of course, this one improves speed as well, provided you've got equipment that is affected by this particular skill. I'd then be looking probably to put on Marksman 1 and improve the accuracy of those guns a bit more, probably Engine Guru 2. I've actually gone out on a limb with my Spitfire 14 pilot, which this one is, and I've put on the Resilience skill. I really like this skill, but it's hard to get. You might want to consider putting on Marksman 2 or perhaps Engine Guru 2, depending on which fight we're talking about. Next, rather than this resilience skill, but do have a look at the characteristics. I'm not going to discuss them in detail here, but I really like this skill. It's handy in a tight spot. Okay, so I think it's time to see how this thing performs in battle. You're actually looking at an image of the peripheral mission map, the harsh times variant. I can't click on it interactively. There's something wrong with the replay which won't allow me to do that, but it's easy to describe. Strategically and tactically, the airbase in the centre is by far and away the most important sector. Strategically, it has the 3 special characteristics of allowing you to spawn, particularly important when it's centrally placed, allowing you to repair your aircraft in full, or selecting a different aircraft if you're destroyed, of the same tier of course. Flanked by 2 garrisons that can just convey the standard 3 resources every 5 seconds. It is a legitimate tactic if you can't get hold of the airbase to try and take the 2 garrisons. You can win the game that way, but obviously it's a lot more difficult to do, and it requires the understanding of your teammates to achieve it. So if we look at the order of battle, we can see that I'm top tier with my Spitfire 5B. I have a Focke-Wulf 190A5, which is probably the worst of the Focke-Wulf 190s for company, and then we have 3 tier 5s, a Junkers 87G, a Yak 7, a sniper, and a Bf-109E3, which is the Dunkirk plane rather than the Tetri variant. And on the enemy side, they have an ME-410, so straight away that's a tier 6 heavy, which we don't have. They have the Fu-1, which has good guns, not particularly manoeuvrable though. Dangerous A6M3 experimental with big cannons, a P40 for more altitude performance, and a Spitfire 1. And looking at that, I really can't tell you which way this battle is likely to go. I will give you a little bit of spoilers. I wanted to demonstrate the value of getting stuck in and not getting discouraged. This is a hard-fought battle. Now, I've built my Spitfire for manoeuvrability. At the start of this battle, I was concerned about how much support I would be likely to get in the centre, legitimately as it turned out, but nonetheless I decided to go and contest it since it was by far and away the most important sector on the map. So I gain altitude as best I can, looking to, if I can, pick off the air defence heavies. First victim comes into view. Manage the guns. Trying to do 2 to 3 seconds bursts, you overheat them at 5 seconds. And then I notice an awful lot of red flying into the sector, including 2 more heavies. I can't say I was surprised, but I was keen to get rid of the ME-410, which I considered at that time to be the most important threat on the enemy team. Dispose of another heavy ADA. There's plenty of trade, so I go looking for my next target. And I've been left in the middle with nothing to shoot at for a little while. Just happens occasionally. And now we're beginning to approach another aircraft. It's the P40, flying too low. Damage him severely. I can tell I'm getting too near, so I break off slightly. I probably shouldn't have turned for him. I got away with it at that point. And then fly towards the heavy, because if I don't, I suspect I'm going to get shot down by it as I turn for other aircraft. I tried to take out the ME-410 again, but I've now got more aircraft behind me and I've shot down for the first time. And we spawn in as we have to because the enemy has now taken the airfield and also a garrison, and it's all looking a bit worrying. And during the period whilst I was out of the game, I noticed that our Focke-Wulf didn't appear to be actually in the game. He was over in the corner of the map, making it even harder. I evade the heavy. I decide not to chase him down. Instead I want to try and get the airfield. Now, the heavy has turned, but I'm hoping the aircraft that have just come out of the spawn will get him. I fire at the Spitfire. And there's an awful lot of red. I'm trying to keep on the Spitfire's tail, but I'm well aware that something else is likely to engage me from behind. I'm not too confident about being able to do anything here, although I do manage to knock down the Spitfire, and we're so close to taking the airfield. Wheeling about, trying not to get shot. My colleagues managed to shoot down another aircraft. I shot down the Boomerang air defence aircraft as well, so we would have captured that airfield, and this is good work. We're fighting against a lot of aircraft that are very suitable for keeping hold of the airfield, and the two heavies are making a massive nuisance of themselves, even if they're not being flown particularly well, as we can see here. Dispose of two aircraft very quickly. The F4U1 comes into view, at least I think it is. Lots of hit points, but once I'm behind it, there's not much you can do about it. I can't stop to get repairs, there are too many aircraft. Find the P40. Whittle down his health. Overheat the gun somewhat in my excitement. Don't actually get the kill. And that's the cost sometimes of overheating your guns, because your DPS goes down. Something else can snag the kill off you. Try to pick up repairs. Just avoid the control tower and chase down the P38J, I think that was, a P38F. I do get that kill. Fortunately my team had managed to capture a garrison. The Focke-Wulf has just come back into the game again, but had done virtually nothing. So we're still struggling. Very nearly get rammed. Go after the F4U1 again. But now I know there's a lot of aircraft that will have seen me and will be coming for me, including one of the heavies. If I turn for the heavy, I'll get shot down by the fighter, but I go for it anyway. Try to let the guns cool down. I'm getting shot from all sides. I get the 410 again. Try to work over the P40, and finally I'm shot down for the second time, this time by the A6M3 Experimental. And I spawned back in, lost the airfield as a result of being shot down, or certainly the major part of the reason for the airfield being flipped was me being shot down, so I have to spawn back at the original spawn point and start all over again trying to capture this vital sector against an enemy team that's determined to hold on to it and win the game themselves. And now it becomes critical. There's an awful lot of red in here and we're coming up on the scoreline. I've got to whittle these down quickly and try and preserve as much of my hit points as possible. Not easy when there's this much red. P40 first. The ME410, who spent his entire battle fighting at low altitudes, and against a competent pilot like me that's not a good idea. However, the A6M3 gets me with his cannons again and the M410 escapes, and now it's not looking good for us. During that time I noticed that our Focke-Wulf 190 had come back into the game, fortunately, and started to make a contribution, and as I spawn in you see that we take the other garrison, but we're a long way behind. We're not going to win this by having 2 sectors to 1. The scoreline is now in operation. Everything I kill will stay killed. If I get killed, we'll probably lose this game. Spitfire 1 pays very little attention as I begin to shoot him, then engages. He's on fire, but I want to make sure of him. And it's a good job I did, because I had to. I know the A6M3 wasn't very far away. I'm being extremely wary about what target I select. Kill the A6M3. hot shot as I came out of the turn. And now we have a chance. And if I can get this air defence aircraft down, we'll have all three sectors, at least for a short while. Managing the guns, and I managed to get the Beaufighter down. The enemy is beginning to thin out, but I must protect this base if I can, as well as take the opportunity to remove enemies from the game. And this has been a hard battle. The Me-410 has continued to fly low, tries to shoot me and misses entirely. I swing round to find he's turn fighting with me. Should have just flown away. And down he goes. And now we're very nearly on equal terms again. My team has been able to hold the two garrisons. I wasn't entirely confident of that, but they did. Break off from the P-38F to shoot the fighters in multi-rolls. Then I realise I can finish off the P-38F, and the ace notification goes through. I've been working hard during this battle. Koshadub medal goes through, and as you can see, that's a fair amount of medals and 19,425 points, which in one of the hardest battles I've ever had on a 3-sector map. Time to review the battle results, and as we can see from the centre, it's a 5 chevron battle, or a Grade 1 fighter if you prefer, grossing 181,662 credits or silver, of which about 60,000 were due to the premium account. We look in the message box, we can see 6,000 credits expenses there. That's for losing the aircraft 3 times. The consumables were prepaid. A handsome 18,437 experience. That's with bonuses. It is a ×5 weekend, and this was the first win of the day. Similar story for the free XP, 921 with bonuses. And 4 tokens. These are all for first medals of the day: the Koshadub, the Hero of the Sky, the Winged Legend, and the Ace. Look at the personal score tab. We can see that 2 of the class-specific missions were complete. The third one was nearly complete, hence the 5 chevrons. 19,425 personal points. 2 sectors captured, the same one twice. 21 aerial targets destroyed, which is 1 more than required for the ace. 4,628 damage. A rather nice 38 critical hits with the Spitfire. Lost the aircraft 3 times in that almighty scrap for the central repair base. 800 capture points received, and that was split to 280 when defending and 520 when attacking. Look at the team score tab. We can see that was comfortably enough to be in first place by both personal points and by chevrons. Some reasonable contributions, although I didn't feel like it in the battle at times, from the Focke-Wulf, the BF-109. And indeed, actually, the Axe-7, it's not that far behind, just didn't get the chevron. And a similar sort of story on the other side. They fought really hard, and they'll probably count themselves a little bit unlucky to have lost. And that concludes my look at the Spitfire 5B, an aircraft that many of you have worked hard to get over the course of the last few days, and many of you are still working hard to get. And you've got until November the 18th to do that. What you get for this premium, or in this case reward aircraft, is something with good guns, pretty good manoeuvrability, speed that's adequate for a turn fighter but certainly not in the high energy class, and fairly mediocre altitude performance. Nonetheless, as a situational aircraft, in some battles it will do extremely well, as I hope you've just seen. Well, I hope you found that helpful, and if you did, you'll come and see my future content. But until then, this is the Noble Q signing out.